What I'm about to share has no real explanation. It's the strangest thing that's ever happened to me, or to anyone I personally know. I work late nights at a small, run-down bar about half an hour from home. Not because I love the hours, but because in a rural area you take whatever steady work you can find. The bar itself isn't anything remarkable, but it pays the bills, and most shifts are uneventful. That night started out no different. My shift went by quietly, and after locking up I got in my car and began the long drive home. Most of my commute winds through narrow back roads, no traffic, hardly any lights, just endless curves between farmland and patches of forest. Honestly, I've always liked it. It's my built-in cool-down time after work, a quiet stretch where I can let my mind wander. But that night was unusually foggy. I've driven that route more times than I can count, but visibility was worse than I'd ever seen. I had to slow down, even with my high beams on. They only lit up the fog like a solid white wall ahead of me. It was frustrating. It was late, I was tired, and now my trip was going to take longer. About halfway home, I noticed something strange. Off to the right, barely visible through the haze, was a faint yellow, blinking light. At first, I thought it was a roadside marker, or maybe a reflector. But no matter how far I drove, it stayed in the same position, blinking steadily, always keeping pace with me. It was impossible to tell how far away it was. The fog was playing tricks on my depth perception. After a minute, I started feeling uneasy. I slowed down, hoping that either the light would pass ahead or disappear altogether. But when I nearly came to a crawl, it still stayed there, blinking in that same steady rhythm, holding the same distance like it was shadowing me. I finally stopped completely, and so did it. It didn't move closer or farther, but the light began to change, growing brighter, each blink glowing like a flame catching a gust of wind, not faster, just stronger. That was enough for me. I reached to shift into reverse and turn around, and realized my engine wasn't running. I hadn't touched the key, but the car was dead silent. My hands, steady even after hours of pouring drinks, were trembling. I tried restarting the engine. Nothing. The blinking light was now flaring brighter and brighter, almost like it was feeding on something. I reached for my phone to call for help, or at least film it, but the screen stayed black. It had been at 20% when I left the bar, but now it was completely dead. Then the light exploded in brightness. It was blinding, like staring into the heart of a star. I had to throw my arms over my face and squeeze my eyes shut. For at least 10 seconds, the glow burned through the fog, and then, just as suddenly, it vanished. When I looked up, the fog was still thick, but the light was gone. I tried the ignition again. This time, the car started immediately. I didn't waste another second getting out of there, eyes locked on the road the rest of the way home. Nothing else happened that night. Nothing's happened since. I've told the story to friends, family, even bar regulars. I've heard every theory you can imagine, but none of them explain what I saw. This happened a little over a year ago. I worked as a night security guard at a small warehouse on the outskirts of town. The cameras covered all sides of the building, and my job was basically to monitor the screens and make occasional rounds. That night, at around 3:15 a.m., movement on camera 4 caught my attention. It was the back door, and it was open. I knew I had locked it, but on the screen it looked wide open, swinging in the wind. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. The hallway to the door was narrow and silent. When I got there, I noticed something strange. From the outside, the door was perfectly closed. I went back to the monitoring room thinking it was just a camera glitch. But when I looked at the screen, the door in the footage was still open, and not just that. Now there was a man standing there with his back to the camera, tall, wearing a long coat and a wide-brimmed hat. I ran back to the door, empty. No sign of forced entry, no sound. I looked around and even climbed onto the roof to make sure no one was in the perimeter. Nothing. I returned to the room and replayed the footage. At the moment I approached the door, the figure on the camera slowly turned its head to look toward the lens. But the face was completely blurred, as if it were impossible to focus. The next morning I showed the footage to the manager. He turned pale and said that camera 4 hadn't been connected for months. This next one happened a couple of years ago. I'm a long-haul truck driver, and I'm used to endless stretches of lonely road. That night, I was on the second-to-last delivery of a long route, pushing to get home. My route cut across a desert highway, no towns, no gas stations, no lights, just black asphalt under a blanket of stars. About an hour from my next stop, I noticed a dark SUV in my mirror. It wasn't tailgating, but it stayed at the exact same distance no matter how I adjusted my speed. For nearly 40 miles it hovered there, never passing, never falling back. I pulled into a small, unlit roadside rest stop to stretch my legs, but the SUV followed, parking way off in a corner. My confusion quickly turned to anger. I climbed down from my cab and started walking toward it. But before I got close, the SUV roared to life and tore out of the lot, kicking up dust before vanishing into the night. Relieved but unsettled, I decided to take a short nap before continuing. I locked my cargo, cracked the window, and leaned my seat back. Maybe an hour later, I woke to faint crunching footsteps on gravel. I peeked through the blinds and saw two figures crouched near my trailer wheels, inspecting the latch. One had a small flashlight, signaling to the other. Then he pulled out bolt cutters. Without thinking, I slammed the air horn. Both men bolted into the brush. Seconds later, that same SUV appeared, lights off, before disappearing again. I called the police. They told me to wait until officers arrived. When they inspected the trailer, they found fresh pry marks on the latch. It hadn't been opened, but they confirmed it was a common tactic for cargo theft in the area. The second to last happened last winter. I was driving back home after visiting my sister on a completely empty mountain road. It was almost midnight, and the cold was biting. The car's thermometer read 2 degrees C. In the middle of a sharp curve, something caught my attention. A bicycle leaning against the guardrail, its rear wheel still spinning slowly, as if someone had just left it there. I slowed down and looked around. No one in sight. Just trees, fog, and the muffled sound of the wind. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were fresh footprints in the snow, but they didn't lead to the roadside or the road. They went straight into the woods. My instinct told me to speed up and leave, but something kept me looking. Then suddenly a figure emerged from between the trees, tall, thin, dressed entirely in black, and stopped right at the edge of the road. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stood there, motionless, staring at my car. Without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas and kept going. In the rearview mirror, I could still see that silhouette standing there, watching. I never found out whose bicycle it was. And I don't want to. The last one starts on a warm summer night, perfect for a late drive. I was cruising my dad's BMW M3 along the highway, windows down, stereo off, enjoying the sound of the engine. On impulse, I took an exit and started cutting through tight, twisting back roads. That's when I slammed on the brakes, nearly hitting a shopping cart sitting in the middle of the road. Curiosity got the better of me. I put the car in park, hazards on, and stepped out. The cart was empty, completely ordinary, just sitting there. But as I turned to go back to the car, two dark figures burst from the farmland, sprinting straight toward me. I dove into the driver's seat. One of them stopped short, but the other slammed into the passenger door hard enough to dent it. We locked eyes. His were bloodshot, his clothes shredded, his face streaked with dirt and possibly blood. He fumbled at the door handle. I floored it, swerving around the cart and speeding off. I called the police on the way home. When I parked, I saw the passenger side covered in blood, more than seemed possible from that brief hit, plus a small dent. The next morning, my dad saw the damage and was furious. Only after I cleaned the car did he believe my story. My best guess? They were trying to lure someone out of their car with the cart. I was just unlucky enough to be the one who stopped. I never heard back from the police, but I still think about that night and how close I might have come to never making it home.